Remember when the Pacers traded for Evan Turner as like their final piece move, and it was
Remember
like
when the Lakers traded for Ramon Sessions? And that
oh my
was supposed to
God.
be the guy.
I
These
need,
things happen.
I need a second, Dave. Oh my God. Welcome to the Lowe Post podcast on a Monday morning where you thought we were done with them. You thought we could leave them in the rearview mirror. You thought the L word. We didn't need to talk about the L word anymore. 2-10. No trade could even vault them into mediocrity. Should they trade Anthony Davis? What about LeBron? Should they trade LeBron? Is LeBron going to leave when Bronny comes in the league? It's over. Well. Just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water, the Los Angeles Lakers are 8-10 and they're 8-2 in their last 10 games. They're up to 12th in the Western, maybe 11th actually in the Western Conference, but only 3.5 games out of 4th or 5th. They have the third best offense in the NBA in that 8-2 stretch. That was obviously their weak link. They're up to a robust 22nd in points per possession for the season. Hurrah. That's an Orlando Magic level offensive efficiency. They're still 10th in defense. That is held strong. And I said two things before the season, Dave McMenamin. First of all, how are you, Dave McMenamin?
Zach, I'm doing well. I'm feeling the holiday spirit coming upon us, and it's much more enjoyable to cover a team with the shred of hope than a team that is hanging out at 2-10.
Shred of hope. I said two things over and over again before this season. Number one, all the noise about Russ, bad fit, supporting cast, can't shoot, too small. None of it matters if LeBron and Anthony Davis are not gods. The whole thing depends on them being gods. If they're the 7th and the 20th best players in the NBA, forget about it. It's over. If they're the 5th and 8th best players in the NBA, you got something going on. No matter what the rest of the noise is, you got something going on. And then I said, all summer, all fall, get ready for the Anthony Davis vengeance season. It's coming. And boy, oh boy, I took notes. at who mocked me. I have the tweets saved. Oh, Zach Lowe, Anthony Davis fell down again. Out for another 2 games. Vengeance season, huh? Well, here we are. Anthony Davis, since November 12th, is averaging 35 points per game. He leads the league in rebounding. He is shooting 65% from the floor in that stretch, 46% on threes. He just hung 55, a double nickel on the hapless pink-clad Washington Wizards. And boy, oh boy, this is a vengeance season, and they're creeping up the standings. The Pacers are creeping down the standings. The Bulls are pratfalling down the standings. And so life is getting a little more interesting, Dave McMenamin, but let's have a caveat. Should we have a caveat real fast?
Yes, we shall.
Let me bust out my Grinch. The 8 wins in this stretch for the Lakers have come against Brooklyn without Kyrie and Ben Simmons, Detroit without Cade Cunningham, a trifecta against the Spurs, who are going all out for Wembanyama.
Including one of those games against the Spurs where Sochan and Pirtle were both playing good games and all of a sudden came up with mysterious quad injuries and didn't finish the game.
The old quad.
The
old quad. Portland without Damian Lillard and Josh Hart. The Wizards and Bradley Beal left the game like 2 minutes into the game. And of course, the Bucks on Friday when Anthony Davis had 41. That was a monster win against the full-strength Bucks. Chris Middleton was back. That was a great win. So you can read this any way you want. If you're a Lakers hater, you can laugh at this entire idea that there's been a renaissance. You can laugh it all off. Look at the schedule. Schedule's about to get even tougher, much tougher. December's brutal. They play every other day on the road. A lot it's brutal. Or you can actually watch the games and think, yeah, the schedule's the schedule, but Anthony Davis looks pretty good. Russ off the bench has been, I will say, acceptable. They have seemed to figure out some things about their rotation and how it should work. For instance, the Russ Anthony Davis lineups without LeBron, those are a net positive on the season now. The LeBron Anthony Davis lineups without Russ, those are a net positive for the season now. Both of those types trending in the right direction. The big three is still kind of hit or miss. Sometimes they only play 6-7 minutes in a game together, so it doesn't really matter. The Russ Anthony Davis pick and roll is becoming a legitimate weapon, and we can talk about the numbers behind that. I think the eye test suggests this isn't just a schedule fluke. I don't know that I'm buying like 8-2. Suddenly they're a juggernaut, but something real is happening here. And the last thing before I turn it over to you, Dave, is you look at their offensive numbers. There's nothing really that screams fluke in any of their offensive numbers. They were already really good at getting to the line and limiting turnovers. They've just gotten better at both of those things in the last 10 games. Their 3-point shooting has bumped up, but it's not been like absurd. They're shooting 37% on threes in their last 10 games, 33% for the season. 37% is not like ridiculous. It's not some crazy outlier number. Now, Lonnie Walker can't miss lately. Maybe that steps back a little bit, but they're still last in 3-point attempts in that stretch. They're still first in rim attempts in that stretch. Their mid-range shooting, that's increased from 39% for the season to 42% in the last 10 games. Again, like not ridiculous. They're sort of doubling down on their strengths and just refining things, getting a little better at everything. Like, I don't think they have the third best offense in the NBA, but nothing about this surge looks completely fluky. So you're around the team all the time. How do they feel about this?
There's a surge of confidence with this group, and it starts with the demeanor and approach that Anthony Davis is bringing to the court. And then I'd say the same type of consistency coming from Darvin Ham and LeBron, quite frankly, as the leaders of this team. And we know that LeBron is someone who can kind of wear his emotions on his sleeve at times. But starting with him going out of the lineup with the groin injury, he became more engaged with this group, more vocal on the bench, more vocal in film sessions, more encouraging of teammates in their individual workouts and practices, those type of things. And he carries such a presence to him that people feel how he's feeling. And he has made an adjustment in terms of how he is bringing energy to this group. They're feeding off it. Once he's come back to the lineup, he's playing much better. His 3-point shot is starting to fall at an acceptable rate when it was dismal his first 11 games of the season or so before he had that groin injury. And they are cutting out, as Darvin Ham likes to term them, self-inflicted wounds. They're not turning the ball over as much, which is not putting them in compromised positions when it comes to transition defense and allowing teams to have 3-on-2 and 4-on-3 fast breaks, shoving down their throats every other possession. And then just someone else's demeanor who is felt on the court, I would say, is Russell Westbrook. Russell Westbrook is playing with a joy. He's playing with some excitement and certainly playing with some pace. That is something that Russ has been asking for ever since he got here. Didn't quite ever find that rhythm last year with last year's team. This year, he has started to not only take the ball and run with it in the second unit, but find guys who now buy into him as that guy. Thomas Bryant, his entire second Laker experience this time around, he's owing his success to Russell Westbrook because Russell Westbrook's looking for him. Those things matter because now Russell Westbrook has an ally in the locker room that's going to lift him up when the leaders get together and have these accountability conversations. Well, there's some people on Russ's side as well as those other guys' side when they start to have the hard conversations.
Hopefully there's no sides. Hopefully we can get out of sides. But, man, you think back the Summer League snub when LeBron said hi to everybody, probably including whatever mascot was running around Summer League and not Russ, to the Russ just obvious discontent with coming off the bench. The whole idea in preseason of coming off the bench, blaming his, what was it? Was it a quad? Was it a hamstring? I can't remember what it was, some leg injury.
It was hamstring, yeah.
On well, my warm-up routine that I've had for 15 years was disrupted, and that was an obvious passive aggressive shot at Darvin Ham, and the idea of him coming off the bench. You have to give Russ credit. Now, maybe he saw the writing on the wall that Darvin Ham was not going to yield. Maybe he saw that the whole league was watching and that his career was entering a phase of uncertainty if he didn't buy in. But he's bought in. Off the bench, he's averaging 15 and 8 on 42% shooting, 34% on threes. Not great. Still too many turnovers. But 42 and 34 is like good enough. It's good enough. It's not damaging. And the 8 assists, he's passing really, really well. Really well. And they found this rotation where he comes in and LeBron goes out, and you have like some Russ AD minutes, and then AD goes out and the Gabriel Bryant front court comes in. And so you have some Russ solo minutes, and you may not even cycle back LeBron and Russ together for the entire first half of the game if things are going well. So you've minimized the overlap between Russ and LeBron in a way that's working for everybody, including here's a stat. I looked this up today because I was watching their Wizards game, and Russ and AD were just tearing the Wizards apart. Now the Wizards are not. There's no great shakes, but the Russ and AD were tearing them apart on that little angle wing pick and roll where it's almost sometimes like a post up into a pick and roll. LeBron and AD do this all the time. I call it the snug pick and roll. They were doing it against the Bucks, and Jeff Van Gundy was talking about it during the game over and over again. And the Lakers have been very smart about using that play, setting low screens for Russ, like setting screens at the foul line for Russ, and other little gambits that make it hard for defenses to just go under the screen on Russ, which is what they want to do. And AD is really good at kind of rolling in to Russ's defender so that if he tries to go under, he just kind of shoves him further and further into the paint, and it becomes impossible for him to meet Russ on the other end. Since November 12th, when this streak started, Russ and AD have run 32 pick and rolls per 100 possessions. That's double the frequency per possession from before November 12th. Now, obviously, LeBron being out for part of that, it impacted that, but it's continued, and it's way higher than it was like 18, 19, 20 last season. And those plays have been really productive for them. And Russ's post-ups have been like hilariously productive. They're averaging 1.4 points per possession when he shoots out of a post-up or passes to somebody, and that guy shoots. That's like, it's not pretty. I don't ever think it's going to be a great fit between the three of them. The Lakers clearly don't think that because they only play 8, 9, 10 minutes together. But you got to give credit. I've been really hard on Russ over the years. Like, he's bought in, and his passing has been sensational.
It's really been special. And you talk about Anthony Davis being the guy that is lifting this team out of the doldrums. Russell Westbrook, I believe the numbers around 2.6 assists per game are to Anthony Davis. So he is directly helping the guy that is turning this thing around. How smart is that, right? That is recognizing what you have to work with here, and that's creating value out of the roster that exists. And if you're Russell Westbrook, that's your best case to try to make it to the end of this season and play out the rest of this contract.
And you mentioned pace. They're second in the league in pace. Only Indiana has played faster than them. And like, that's not how LeBron has played the majority of his career. And they're way faster when Russ is on the floor. Their pace with Russ on the floor is like astronomical. And their pace when he's on the bench is fast, but not crazy. But even so, that's LeBron kind of ceding something to the structure of the team, because he has never loved playing turbo all the time. And they're playing fast when he's on the floor. And they've done this in the last week too. They're starting to play around with this zone defense. Yeah. And one of the benefits of the zone, other than it hides all your bad, slow, ground bound, small, tiny defenders, is that when you get a rebound and push, all the matchups are kind of scrambled. Everyone's not attached to the right guy, and you can run off that. And they're running. I was actually wanted to ask you, like, what, because if you look at the numbers, they didn't play any zone until like 2-3 weeks ago, and now they're busting it out. I think that's kind of it's kind of working. The numbers aren't great, but it's a little tool for them.
Yeah, so they used it a lot in the first half against Washington, and obviously lost in the shuffle of the excitement of the double nickel from Anthony Davis. We had more pressing things to ask Darvin Ham about. But to me, the question, had we got around to it, was how much is that you started to expand the playbook? Because Darvin was pretty open about the fact that he was not trying to put too much on their plate as he got through the first month or so of just figuring out a rotation and figuring out some sort of cohesion with what he wants them to do. And how much of, Wizards are not a good outside shooting team, and playing zone, you're kind of asking teams to launch it from there.
You almost wonder why teams don't play more zone against the Lakers to that point.
Right. And they, to be honest, like last year, and they weren't a very good 3-point shooting team last year, you did see more teams playing zone against them. I haven't seen it a ton this year, but it's a good point.
And look, I can hear the eye rolling from the fans of the other 29 teams. Oh my God. Another podcast about a below 500 Lakers team. No one's running away with the West. The Suns are 16-7. They're awesome. The best teams are not super scared of Phoenix. The Pelicans are number 2 in the West. They look, Zion, a brief New Orleans Pelicans detour right now. McCollum, Ingram, Zion have like not even played that much together, and they're 15-8. And Zion, I had Andrew Lopez on a few weeks ago, and I said to him, I feel like they just kind of need to run more of the offense through Zion. Like it's a little too hard. There are a few too many like tough CJ McCollum and Brandon Ingram jumpers when you have this like Lawrence Taylor, Bo Jackson, Charles Barkley combination on the floor. And he said, just watch. The Zion pick and rolls are about to go up. The post-ups are about to go up. That guy, if he can stay healthy, is going to enter that pantheon of guys who, when you scout them for a 7-game series and then have to deal with them for a 7-game series, is just going to be hell. Just hell on wheels to deal with. They look really, really good. Denver, every time you think they're getting it together, they kind of take a couple of bad losses. They lost in New Orleans in the Jose Alvarado bonanza on Sunday. Look, roll your eyes. I can tell you executives from all the teams we just talked about and all the other teams in the Western Conference, when they see Anthony Davis playing like this, when they see him running some inverted pick and rolls in transition, when they see him hitting little floaters in isolations and looking smooth again, when they see him playing defense like this, and we should talk about that, his defense has been special all season long. You think they're rolling their eyes at the Lakers? Because I'll tell you right now, they're not. If nobody, even if you're favored against them, even if you think their supporting cast stinks, even if you think their supporting cast can't shoot and it's 3 little guards around LeBron and AD and it's too small, even if they don't make a trade between now and then, and we'll talk about that too, this Anthony Davis, even with this LeBron James, who's older, shooting more threes, maybe not quite as fearsome, although he's still pretty goddamn fearsome. Dave, you see these guys, when people see LeBron at the rim on defense, you saw there were like 3 instances just last night in Washington where there was a fast break and LeBron's near the rim and, oh my God, I got to pass it out. I don't want to even touch this guy. This Anthony Davis and this LeBron James, nobody is excited to play them in the playoffs. So you can roll your eyes all you want. The league is watching the Lakers now, and at the very least, even the skeptics are like, I got to kind of start paying attention to what's going on here because this is getting interesting. And AD, you just can't say enough. The numbers are just crazy. Is he? And I mentioned the fluidity with the ball. Has he gotten healthier? Has he gotten more confident? Is it just that he got to play without LeBron? Like what happened?
All the above. He did get healthier. His lower back was barking at him from the preseason on to the start of the year. He did have to miss 1 game, I think 5 or 6 games into it. And it was more egg in his face. There's probably more mentions on your Twitter timeline because He was the guy who said, I want to play all 82, right? That was his goal for the season. And there goes that goal out the window after just a handful of games. But there's been a shift, and it began obviously in the offseason. He was very intentional about getting his body into a better place to be able to withstand what the NBA schedule asks of you. But there's also a direction in which he's playing where it's not settling. Like, look over these 9 games. He's shooting 45% from three, but he's only taken 11 threes in those 9 games. He's taken 91 free throws. And that is, there are open looks he's getting from the perimeter, but instead he's putting it on the floor, compromising the defense, drawing contact. And then once he gets to the free throw line, making his shots 88% over the stretch. And to me, that is just showing seriousness about the task at hand, because it is a concentration thing. Anthony Davis' shot is good enough to be making these shots, but you have to put yourself in the right mental space, and he certainly is. It's a dominant type of mentality where he is playing with a relentless energy of attacking the rim, and it really opens up so much for the rest of the team. And I think not only is LeBron and Anthony Davis's play right now a reminder to the rest of the league that watch out for the Lakers in the West, but it's a reminder to the corporate offices in El Segundo, California, where the Lakers front office make the decisions about this team's future, that there is still a championship core in place with these guys. And the words of Dr. Jerry Buss they still echo through the Lakers organization. And his standpoint over the many, many teams he presided over was, if this team is a conference finalist and there's a marginal trade you can make that involves some risk, perhaps involves taking out some more money, perhaps involves expending future assets to do so, you do it. Because if you view your group as a potential conference finalist, it's worth it to go a little bit more in, because it's all about trying to win, right? So if you view them as a conference finalist, then that little push over the edge can make them in the NBA finals. And once you're there, anything can happen. And right now, LeBron and Anthony Davis looking like that, they look like the best duo in the league. So why not say over 9 games?
Tatum and Brown. It's still Tatum and Brown.
Anthony Davis is playing 35 and 16. LeBron.
You got to see. I mean, first of all, it's only been like 6 games with LeBron and AD, probably, right? So I got to see it first, right, for a little bit longer than this. So we learn something every 10 games, right? Like every 10 games, the league shifts a little bit. And I mentioned, okay, the Pacers. Everyone's like, oh, the Pacers going to be a playoff team. Well, the Pacers have played the easiest schedule in the entire league, and they're down to 1 game over 500. They could get to 6th or 7th worst record in the NBA pretty easily if they want to. I mentioned them because, as you wrote last week, the endless trade rumors. The Bulls have gone from, this isn't going that great, to full on just crisis. Like, this is a crisis in Chicago. 9-14 is a crisis. I mentioned that because of the DeRozan Vucevic stuff that's never going to go away with the Lakers. And with the Lakers, obviously, have surged in those last 10 games. And so everything sort of can flip in that span. What's going to happen in the next 10 games is the Lakers schedule is going to be really tough, and we're going to learn more about them than we know today. The Warriors seem to have found their footing at 13 and 11. Are we going to now, we just talked about how the top of the West is a little bit wonky, right? Is it with the Warriors playing the way they are, the Clippers, who are now on the verge of honestly taking over the Nets perch as like the greatest theoretical team that ever existed in the NBA. Well, they're about to be a little bit less theoretical because Kawhi and Paul George are coming back. Can we see it? My God, as someone who picked them to make the finals, I feel like such a goddamn sucker. Can we see it for 10 games? Can we see it? Can we see it? I don't like a month, forget a month. A month is like an eternity. Can we see it for 10 games? And then if we do, and if they go 8-2 and Kawhi looks like 90% of Kawhi, the West may feel a little bit more settled at the top than it does today. But those are both big, big ifs, and we'll see what we learn about the Lakers and everyone else in the West over the next 10 games, just as the landscape changed. Larger point, you mentioned the C word, championship, conference finals. As jumbled as the West is, I can't conclude. I'm sure LeBron and AD think that because that's what they should think. I can't get there yet, given how easy the schedule is and given how bad they looked in starting 2-10. I can't just wipe away 2-10 as if it didn't exist and say this is now the team. I can't quite get there. And that brings us to the trade stuff. So you mentioned the front office.
Let me just play devil's advocate there, though. You are still allowing
Satan's advocate.
Lucifer's
advocate. You are advocating for Lucifer from the depths of Hades.
If you're going to allow for your instinct on the Clippers to come to fruition, right? And yes, in some sense dismiss what has happened thus far in the season, because what we've seen thus far in the season, they don't look anything like an NBA Finals team. And
no, they don't.
By the way, I also picked them to come out of the West. Then why not allow for those first 12 games of the Lakers to be a growing pain period with a new coach and a roster that only includes 6 players from last year's team?
I'll allow for that a little bit, but it's all like the Clippers are 13-11, so they have a winning record. They're a few games ahead of the Lakers, and they've at least proven like without our guys, we could scrap together some wins. And the supporting cast is better than the Lakers supporting cast. But no, it's a fair point. Like I said, I feel like a sucker. I feel like every year I'm like, oh, I'm going to look at the depth. Robert Covington. Is Robert Covington even going to get minutes this year? Oh, my God. Nick Batum went 0 for 2 in 28 minutes again. Wow. So I'm with you. I'm with you. If you force me to pick a team to win the West right now, that's actually a good exercise. If you, for right now, the data you have, who do you pick to win the West? I have no goddamn idea. I might just shrug my shoulders and pick Phoenix. I would, who I'd probably pick is Golden State, but I could easily talk myself into the Pelicans. I mean, it's just like, why not?
I mean, haven't you also been telling us in NBA Today every chance you get, like, don't forget about Denver?
I could pick Denver. I could pick Denver, but every time, I mean, Michael Porter's been injured, so that's a big deal for them, and they need him. They need his spacing. That's what's been sort of laid bare in the last few. I mean, they had a bad loss in Atlanta without Trae Young, and that was a whole rigmarole for the Hawks, apparently. And they had a bad loss in New Orleans. So every time you think they're catching a rhythm, it's like, okay, here goes Denver again. I don't know. Oh, okay, trades. That's what we're going to talk about.
Yeah,
El Segundo,
sure.
The front office. You wrote a big thing last week in the lead up to the Pacers game about this sort of theoretical 2 picks and Russ for Hield and Turner. I don't think anything's changed in that context. I don't think the Pacers are ready to go there yet. I think it would definitely take both picks for them to even start considering it. And I do think they're considering a Miles Turner extension instead of trading him. So we mentioned the Bulls one. There's a Charlotte one that we can talk about. And as you wrote in your piece, very presciently, I don't know. There's also this alternative where they try to trade Nunn plus Beverly, who's been not good for them, and plus 1 pick for a less sort of starry return, like just one good player maybe who can step in and play immediately. And that still gives you, even if you maybe you can even do it for like 4 second-round picks. They have a lot of seconds they can trade. That still gives you the option of, like, if that deal works, well, we still have the Russ and picks deal down the line if we want to. I want you to talk about the trades in this context because a couple of interesting things have happened. Number one, Russ's playmaking feels important to their team. Like fit, flaws, shooting. LeBron needs a playmaker around him. He needs multiple playmakers around him. Is Dennis Schroeder enough? That's number one. Number two, AD is doing this as a full-time center, full stop, period. He's never playing the 4. So if you're going to talk about bringing Vucevic, for instance, into this team, AD's playing the 4 now. Like, you're going to just roll with Vucevic at the 5 and what that does to your defense. And AD is going to chase around power forwards and take him away from the rim, where he's been extraordinary all season. Miles Turner, he's a 5. Now he's better able to chase around 4s. He's done a little bit of that. Is that really what you want? In that context, it almost feels like the kind of smaller trade you mentioned would aim more towards like a combo forward more than a center. I just think it's like, you can talk about Pirtle and the Spurs. It's like AD is thriving at the 5 and they need playmaking. I think it complicates even that Indiana trade a little bit. What do you make of all that?
Well, I think there's a bunch of things to consider here. One, just starting with Indiana, if you trade for those two guys, yes, the idea of you taking AD away from the position he's been thriving in doesn't make a ton of sense, but you also do know that Anthony Davis likes having a true center or another big next to him. He just likes it.
Miles Turner shooting 39% on threes this year. That's a little over his head, but he's a capable shooter.
You trade for Turner, you're going to extend him. You have to, or it's a disaster. And then, like, that's your guy. Like, that's your guy you're moving forward with. And are we convinced, based on his time in Indiana, that someone, the numbers certainly look good right now, but is that going to be one of your centerpieces that you build around moving forward in LA? There's some reticence there. Then let's say you go into the Indiana deal and parse it down to something smaller, and you say, you know what, like that, there is some risk there with Turner. We take AD away from the 5, and we don't know if we want to extend him. Let's just try to get healed in the smaller context. Well, if he's your one guy, right, and this thing doesn't work out, this thing ends up in a first round flame out, second round flame out. Well, now Buddy Hield, because we know how these things go, Buddy Hield's left carrying the bag. You know, he was a guy who was supposed to shake things up, turn things around. He could become the scapegoat, and you know that's something.
Remember when the Pacers traded for Evan Turner as like their final piece move, and it was
when the Lakers traded for Ramon Sessions. And that was supposed to be the guy. These things happen.
I need a second, Dave. Oh my God. There was a first round pick in that deal, right? Didn't Luke Walton get traded in that deal?
I think Luke, yeah, it may have been the same deal. Yeah, I part of me says Luke was not part of that deal, but
let's just do 15 minutes revisiting that deal. So just throw the whole podcast away. Ramon Sessions, where is he now? Anyway, okay, so your Hield becomes this, and also Hield is too small. Like when they play these 3 guards around AD and LeBron, or 2 guards with Russ around the big 3, it can work because the 2 guys in the middle of it are so good. But you even saw last night, Kyle Kuzma is just feasting. By the way, would be a great fit and a great trade target for the Lakers. Is just feasting with like hooks and floaters because Austin Reeves, Russell Westbrook, Patrick Beverley, Lonnie Walker, on and on, are too small. They need one bigger guy who can shoot, but like everybody needs that guy.
You're so right on Kuzma, though.
Why? Well, why wouldn't you make an offer for Kuzma now?
I'm wondering about this. Like, do you think that is something that is knowing your personnel, knowing a player, knowing their background, knowing their personality fit, recognizing that, you know, there are all those valuable things why you'd want him back? Or is that just like you can never swallow that because you traded him away?
There's no room for pride when LeBron is about to turn 38. If you think he's the guy, call the Wizards, be like, look, you don't want to extend him. We don't know. I'm just saying this. Like, I'm playing Rob Pelinka. You don't want to extend him. None, Beverly, 4 second-round picks. Okay, say no. Then we got to start talking about a first and what the protections are on the first and how uncomfortable that makes. Make the call. Like, what is there, egg on my face because Kyle Kuzma became really good with the Wizards? Who cares?
Well, I do think that is a solution of a one player addition that can have legitimate gains for this group.
No question. I mean, I'll go through some names that I just sort of made up and bouncing around with league insiders. Kuzma was one that came up a lot. Doug McDermott comes up. I just don't. They're not getting any defense. It's just it's just. I love Doug.
Would Darvin Ham even play him when it matters because you couldn't trust him on defense, and that becomes the point of like, is it really valuable if the coach won't use him when we need him on the court? So I agree.
People mention. I mean, I'm not even going to say the names because they're just so out of the Lakers' price range, so I won't even say them.
Okay.
A guy I would make a call on is PJ Washington, because he's entering free agency after the season. Can shoot, although he went 0 for 13 the other night. He can shoot, can play some defense when he's engaged. Kind of hit or miss on that end, but is a good young player who fits the positional framework that they need. You mentioned personality dynamics. Mitch Kupchak is the general manager of the Hornets. I don't think he's cutting the Lakers any breaks in trade talks. I don't think he's cutting Rob Pelinka any breaks in trade talks. Kenrich Williams comes up a lot with the Thunder. Everything I've heard, and this may be outdated, is he does not want to ever leave Oklahoma City, and they view him as like potential, like Nick Collison 2.0 in terms of building their culture. So, I mean, I'd call, but who knows? People mention O'Shea Brissett with the Pacers. He's all right. Oubre, I don't trust Oubre in a big playoff game. The one other guy that we should mention is Bojan Bogdanovic in Detroit, who the whole league whiffed on before the season. Detroit got him for Olynyk and a song, like seconds. That's worth a meeting about. I think if you called Detroit and you're like, Nunn, Beverly, and a first, and we'll have to negotiate protections on the first because we're at risk of already giving away an embarrassing swap to the Pelicans. I think Detroit, if you throw the first in, I think there are negotiations to happen there around the protections. I think that's realistic. Those are the names I came up with. For the one, Cam Reddish, they seem to have an infatuation with Cam Reddish. Whatever. Those are the names I came up with, excluding the Indiana deal, the larger Charlotte deal that has Rozier and all this, which I think is too complicated and would require both the picks and not worth it. And the DeRozan Vucevic one, which again, I get why it's so appealing in theory, and I love DeRozan. I think DeRozan would fit with the Lakers. The Vucevic fit I don't love.
So Reddish, we know there's reasons why there's an infatuation there, mostly because of the length and the athleticism and the 3-point shooting, but also because of the business reasons. Like, let's not.
Is he represented by Clutch? I don't even know.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's also bring up the fact that DeMar DeRozan, demeanor-wise, the place he's at is his career, the fact that he continues to bring up the Lakers when doing interviews, and being quite open about how he thought that trade was going to happen and how he desired to be there. Like, there's something there. There's something to the fact that LeBron went out to the Drew League to play with DeMar DeRozan this summer. Like, those things,
I forgot about that.
They don't show up out of thin air, right?
No.
So there's something there, and I think there are some fit concerns if that was the guy, because his 3-point shooting traditionally hasn't been lights out, and how you're going to figure out the spacing if he likes to live in the mid range, if you're going to have the other guys working out of the post. But I just feel like basketball IQ wise and kind of his approach to the game, it would fit so well personality wise with LeBron and AD that there could be a fit there. I just don't know if it gives them ultimately everything they need. I do think the way this thing is trending is it will be the smaller type of deal for a role player or role players that will be the first domino to fall. And they see how that looks. And then there's still potential for a 1-pick Russ thing that would happen afterwards. but I don't think that's their preference. I think their preference is to have the smaller deal be enough to get this team to another level, and they continue to grow together. And Russ continues to parse down his self-inflicted wounds, as Darvin Ham likes to call them, while bringing the positive parts to his game. And then you have him come off the books, or potentially you re-sign Russ at a much more digestible number in the offseason, then he is a potential trade trip moving forward.
What a plot twist that would be. My brain has never even contemplated Russell Westbrook on the Los Angeles Lakers in 2023-24. It would be a happy little plot twist. Let's allow for some happiness. Let's get in the holiday spirit and allow for some happiness. There are also some interesting little second draft candidates laying around. Like someone mentioned Rui Hachimura to me. Someone not with the Lakers mentioned Rui Hachimura. Chuma Okiki. Never stays healthy. I don't know. But December 15th is 10 days away. You have mentioned that. Many have mentioned that. That's when a lot of free agents that were signed become trade eligible. And we got to start keeping our eye on the smaller deal now, according to your reporting, which is always bang on. You've got to catch a flight to Cleveland, Ohio. Anything else you wanted to get off your chest before we let you go to the airport?
Oh, wow. That's such a open-ended question here, Zach. I'm sure I could go through many things. I just think let's keep an eye on how just watch the games and watch LeBron and Anthony Davis's body language. It tells you so much. And you'll see the belief factor with this group. They'll tell you. You can see with your own two eyes. And if they have that, they continue to have that, and they're not going to win 8 out of 10 moving forward. Let's put that aside. They're going to come back down to earth because the schedule is going to get harder. But if while you're watching, you see two engaged players that are playing with an intentionality and an aggression and a passion and a joy, it's worth it for the Lakers to continue to enhance this team.
Woo. I'll check back with you in the next 10 days when the schedule gets a little harder. I always tell people it's tempting to look at the West and stack them up team by team and say, okay, puncher's chance. You got to win 3 playoff series to get out of the West. You got to be, I'm just making this up, like depending on where they get seeded, you're talking like New Orleans, Denver, Golden State, something like that. Like as nice as 8-2 has looked, and as nice as you can make it look when you go team by team, winning 12 is just really, really hard. And I don't think they have the goods for that. Maybe even close to it right now, but you never know. If AD is going to play like this, it changes the entire model of the team becomes valid again. It was invalid when he was playing just pretty good, and that 20th ranking in our ESPN 100 looked realistic. Now it's valid again. Dave McMenamin, coverage of the Lakers, just absolutely second to none. Thank you for making a little time. Enjoy your continued jaunt around the Eastern Conference, my friend.
Appreciate it. Thanks, though.
All right, let's change gears from an older team trying really hard to win now to some of the youngest players in the NBA. We are 20 plus games into the season. It's time to look around and say, hey, how are these rookies doing? No one better to do that with than Jonathan Givony. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Zach. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to talk about these rookies. And I want to start with the Houston Rockets, who have pivoted between being completely unwatchable, must lead the league in 0 pass possessions, just so much dribbling, so little passing, which has marginalized Jabari Smith, the number 3 pick in the draft, and was up until the final buzzer considered possibly the number 1 pick. And having watched everyone play, I'm like, how is that a thing? How is he going to be picked over Paolo Banchero? We could talk about that. But 4-3 in their last 7 games, 3 really good wins against the Suns, the Hawks, and last night in double overtime against the Sixers with James Harden back. And I'll tell you, Jonathan, that Hawks win was my favorite random win for any team of the entire season. The Hawks were clowning Houston, clowning them. They were up 90-74, I think was the score. And Trae Young and DeJounte Murray were just like dancing and prancing. And Trae Young hit a three to put him up by 16. And DeJounte Murray did the thing where he looked at the crowd and posed while the shot was in midair, and they were dancing. And Jabari Smith got in somebody's face with the Hawks, and I was like, you can't do that to us on our home floor. And the Rockets came back to win that game. And they also have one of my favorite rookies in the entire league, not Jabari Smith. He's second in rookie player efficiency rating. He's basically just the top three in all advanced stats among rookies. Jonathan, I'm afraid I have a little rookie crush on Tari Eason. So pick one of those two. What have you seen so far? I'll let you lead.
Well, both of the Rockets guys were very hard for me to rank because, with this article that just came out yesterday, our power rankings, it's not a redraft, and it's not based on their potential, So it's really who has provided the most value to their NBA team so far. And neither of those guys play like huge roles. Like they're very rarely the guys that decide if the Rockets win or lose. I'm sure the Rockets prefer to lose every game, like a lot of the worst teams in the NBA right now. And they're a hard team to watch, honestly. Like I've always struggled with Kevin Porter. Jalen Green is very hit or miss in terms of what you're getting from him. Way too much Eric Gordon, way too much Dacian Nix.
I don't know what you know what? I don't want to talk about Dacian Nix. I just don't understand it. I don't know what's going on. And it's a lot of Dacian Nix.
A lot of Dacian Nix. He got really fat again, which was the reason why he went undrafted, I struggled with him. I did not have Tari in our top 11. And
that's it. You're off. You're off the podcast. Someone else is going to have to come on and do it. How did you not have Tari Eason in the top 11?
It's a pretty interesting class, like who's providing more value to their team, him or Andrew Nembhard, him or Walker Kessler,
him.
Yeah, I don't think so, honestly, like looking at their record. So, I feel like Tari Eason would be a guy that would be a lot more interesting to watch on a better team, because it's so much standing around watching Kevin Porter dribble it 17 times and then jack a pull-up jumper, or Jalen Green doing the same, like he doesn't really give them the floor spacing that I think they probably need. I mean, it's hit or miss, and so, but I love his energy. I love the deflections. I love the offensive rebounds. I love the way he gets out in transition. And so he's a really fun guy. Jabari Smith too. I think they're starting to figure out now how to utilize him a little bit better. The first, 10, 12, 15 games of the season were a complete disaster, I think he was shooting like in the mid 30s for his 2-point percentage, which is, maybe the worst in the NBA. He's been a lot better as of late, 42% for three over the last 10 games. He's really starting to perk up defensively. Like you said, he brings them that competitiveness that they really, really lack.
I loved when he was like, I'm the youngest guy on the floor. I don't care. You don't get to talk to us like that on our home court, Atlanta Hawks. And they walked the walk. They came back and won the game. All right, let's talk about Jabari Smith, because he was going to be number one up until the buzzer, was purported to be number one up until the buzzer. You can see it, right? Like you can see the tools. He's shooting 38% from three now, I think, or 36% from three. Gigantic wingspan, can switch across a lot of positions. Good rebounder. I think he's a good contested rebounder. He likes to get in the fray, can grab and go in transition. You've seen flashes of like creating off the dribble when he gets rare chances to dribble. But like you said, he's mostly standing around in the corner. He doesn't really even get to screen very much because the Rockets are playing, all three of their centers are getting in rotation minutes, Şengün, Fernando, and Garuba. So he doesn't really even get to be like the pick and roll, pick and pop, pick and flare kind of guy. So it's been hard to kind of figure out like, what is he going to be really other than what he is? But you can see tools greater than he's been able to show. it's unfair to him because it's 20 games in on a team that's just dominated by these two guards who love to dribble all the time. But man, it's like Banchero. We don't even need to talk about Banchero. That guy's a monster. I don't care that he's shooting 26% from three. He's a monster. He can do everything on offense. He's actually a better defensive player already than I thought he was going to be given his reputation. I don't really know like how Jabari Smith Jr. How is he considered the best prospect in the draft? What am I not seeing because of the context in Houston?
He was shooting so well as his most of his freshman season at Auburn, and they did a great job of not exposing his weaknesses. Instead of letting him play one-on-one from beyond the arc, which is what Houston were doing a lot earlier on in the season. They put him in the mid post. They put him at the elbow. Jabari Smith is not an athlete, and he's not a ball handler. And so he's not a guy that you really want him dribbling more than once at best. You want him playing off these quick rip throughs. Like his turnaround jumper was falling, with regularity. He was coming off screens. He was bringing incredible energy. He was, when he would dribble, it would be like to take a defensive rebound, dribble it up, and hit a transition pull-up three, which, you rarely see a 6'9" guy do. And I think the hope was, his frame will keep filling out. And, with more space in the NBA, the lack of athleticism won't be too much of an issue. But I think people, they kind of ignored some of the red flags that were there that we discussed during the year, and people didn't really want to hear about them. I think Jabari Smith had 13 dunks all season in college, which is unfathomably low. Chet Holmgren had 60 plus. I mean, Banchero had 40 plus. If you can't impose your will at the college level and shoot a respectable percentage inside the arc, which Jabari Smith did not do. I think he shot 45% for two, really low. And so those were some of the concerns. And so, a lot of this rookie class, the guys that we're going to talk about, the context is so important. How are they being utilized? Who's surrounding them? How competent, do they know how to use these guys? And I don't think that the Houston Rockets knew what they were getting in Jabari Smith, or they were just like, whatever, we don't care. We're just going to let him, work on his weaknesses, work on his game, and it made him look really bad early on. And I think that, they're starting to figure out how to utilize him a little bit better. But there's, honestly, even in these last 10 games, there's still red flags there, he's going to have to build up his frame a lot, I think, to play through contact, to be a better finisher. He's never going to be an athlete. He plays this kind of sped up brand of basketball in terms of, his passing and his decision making, that wasn't as much of an issue at Auburn, where they played like an NBA style. And they had better spacing, and so he was the number one option, and so that's I think he's had to adjust, and there's been some ugly moments, and I don't think he's totally out of the water, just because he's beginning to make shots the way he has, there's still going to be some ups and downs here, I suspect, as the year moves on.
Of course there will be, but I actually, when I've watched him, it's just such a weird place to develop. I've been fine. I'm not super psyched that he fell to number 3 and that's who he ended up getting if I'm the Rockets, but I'm fine. Eason. Oh, by the way, another plus point for Jabari Smith Jr. He hit a bank shot corner 3 last night against the Sixers. And this is my litmus test for players. One of my litmus tests. Are you my kind of player or are you not my kind of player? If you bank in a 3, particularly from the corner, which is if you tried it 100 times, you might not be able to do it. You have 2 choices. Act all serious, just jog back on defense, not acknowledging that the basketball gods just gave you a gift, to almost pretend oh, what? Some weird happened? No, I meant to do that. Or shrug and laugh at your good fortune. Those are my guys. And Jabari Smith was shrugging and laughing and yeah, I know, I didn't mean to do it. So that's good. Eason. But first of all, the Rockets starting lineup, and I don't really think this means all that much considering how young they all are. It's the worst lineup in the NBA. Statistically, it's the worst lineup in the NBA. Yeah. The threesome of Smith, Porter, and Green is minus 160. That's raw points. That's the worst among any three-man group in the NBA, and it's not close. Throw Şengün in as a fourth player. It's minus, I think, 110 or 115. Also the worst among four-man groups. Their bench, which Ryan Hollins has nicknamed the Goon Squad, is a pretty big net positive for the season. And as an example, when Tari Eason and Kenyon Martin Jr., who's been sensational this year, are on the floor, the Rockets are +5 per 100 possessions. And I'll tell you why I like Eason. He can do a little bit of everything. He's super switchable on defense, which is like, that was the raw material that they drafted. It was like, let's get the Swiss Army knife on defense. He's an incredible rebounder. He averages almost 3 steals per 36 minutes. And like New Orleans has Grand Theft Alvarado. We got to start coming up with something for Eason because he's getting these backcourt steals every game. Now, they almost always end in bloopers with Houston flubbing the opportunity to score. And Garuba had people need to YouTube the Usman Garuba blooper last night off a Tari Eason steal. I could not even possibly do it justice describing it in words. He's also, a lot of his offensive rebounds to as a caveat are on his own misses at the rim, shooting 36% from three. I love this guy. And when I asked around the scout community, like, what was the book on this guy? Why was he not drafted higher? Can you guess what I heard over and over again?
Let's feel for the game.
Can't remember plays.
Yeah.
Can't remember plays. We heard it over and over again that he couldn't remember plays. And so
like
maybe
Paul Reed, same thing,
And so maybe being drafted in Houston where like they don't run plays is perfect for him. Just like run around and do random stuff. Again, it's early. We don't know what he is on a competitive team, but I love what I've seen from him so far.
Yeah, we have to get rid of Kevin Porter. We have to get rid of Daishen Nix. We have to figure out if Stephen Silas is
I'm not totally out on Porter. I don't like watching him play. I don't like watching him play, but you need guys. I just want them to use Şengün a little bit more as a trigger man, just to get them out of this monotony of no passing on any possessions, just no pass possessions. But you need guys who can break down people off the dribble. You need guys who can score from 3 levels, and he can kind of do that. And you need guys with balls, and he's got balls. So I'm not all the way out. It's not an enjoyable experience, though.
No, definitely not. Yeah, I can't believe we talked about them for this long.
I think that they've been fun. All right, you don't share my Eason enthusiasm.
No, I like Tari Eason. Yeah, no, I watched a lot of NBA games the past week. Like I was stuck in this cave for a month watching a billion college basketball games, and I had to come out of my cave and focus on the NBA, which I don't usually do in the month of November. Like I'm so locked in on the draft, and it was actually a very enjoyable experience watching all these rookies, really catching up. And it helped me so much, honestly, for this upcoming draft, because like it kind of put guys in a different light than I thought they would be, and it's causing me to rethink the way I have some of these guys ranked. And actually I went to a couple of NBA games too. And so like, it was awesome. I did not enjoy my Houston Rockets watching experience.
Well, don't go all the way out on Tari Eason. I like him. He's causing.
No, Tari Eason was the most enjoyable part of the experience, but like Kevin Porter, Eric Gordon, Daishen Nix, I saw too much.
You have to. He's not a rookie, but I mentioned Kenyon Martin Jr.
Oh,
people who are listening to this, you have to find the moment in the second half last night when I think he got a loose ball on the left baseline. And we know Kenyon Martin is a hellacious dunker, one of the best dunkers in the league. And he saw a long runway to the rim that was clear and one guy underneath the basket defending it. And the one guy was Joel Embiid. And literally they slowed it down on the Houston broadcast. You could see Kenyon Martin's eyes widen and a little smirk come across his face because he thought, oh, I'm going to get him. I'm going to get the big, and he went for it and drew a foul. Like, and it was almost a clean block, but like he had this glee of like, oh, Paul Bunyan's under the basket. I'm going to dunk it on Paul Bunyan's face. It was great. Can I pick the next rookie to talk about? Because there's one guy I really want to talk about.
This is your show. You can do whatever you want, Zach.
I want to talk about Jalen Williams, J-Dub, on the Oklahoma City Thunder, who's been starting for them for quite a while now. And I've enjoyed watching his game because he's kind of a high IQ feel player. He's only shooting 30% from three, but he's a good catch and go player. He's a good passer on the move. You could tell he thinks the game really well. Like he's one of those guys who reads the game kind of from a step ahead, can pass it with both hands, has a little funky runner, right-handed runner, leaning and going left that seems to go in every time. Defensively, I think he has great feel and balance on defense. He can close out hard without flying by people. He keeps guys in front of him. He forces guys to make tough shots over him, and they're throwing him in the deep end on defense. He guarded DeJounte Murray last night, Bogdanovich. He guards good players every game. And the Thunder, the numbers don't show it, but when they have Gilgeous-Alexander, Dort, Giddey, and Jalen Williams out there with one big man, they you can see the blurry outlines of like a regular modern basketball team. And he gets to run some pick and roll too when they sit Shea and Giddey at the same time, which is like, I hate when they do that. It's a great way to try to lose, but I hate when they do that. He's a very unthundery player, right? Like the Thunder have drafted so much for length and athleticism and like we'll work out the basketball stuff and the shooting later. This feels like the opposite kind of pick. Like we'll draft for feel and IQ and obviously position and see how his athleticism, what he has translates to the NBA. What have you seen from him and what was the book on him coming out of Santa Clara? He was, I think, the 12th pick, right?
Yeah, he was the 12th pick. He was the big riser of the pre-draft process last year. And I think a lot of the things that you just touched on are the things that people saw in workouts. It's what they saw at the NBA Combine, where he, decided to play both games, which most guys don't want to do. I kind of disagree that he's not a Thunder player because like the 7'2" wingspan, he's 6'4.5" barefoot, 7'2" wingspan. He can legitimately guard 7'2.25". Wow. Can legitimately guard power forwards, but like you said, they play him a lot at point guard, especially in their second units. He's got a great feel. He's got great pace. He's playing off all these hesitation moves. He does it with both hands. He fight, second side, bounce passes, skips, off a live dribble. Just really knows how to play basketball, and he's been very
underrated skill, by the way, really knowing how to play basketball. I think I would, if I were a GM, I would look for those guys of a basketball team. If you know how to play basketball, I want you on my team.
Yeah, I mean, the Thunder drafted Josh Giddey too. It's not all about athletes. I do think that Presti does value those guys who know how to play. He and Shea, obviously, he's honestly not. Athleticism is not his number one trait. Like he's got this herky-jerky game. He gets anywhere he wants. So he can pass. He's an incredible shot maker. So yeah, I think he really, really fits them. And they were enjoyable to watch because you understand kind of what they're trying to build. There's a style of play there that really fits the NBA game, and that's why Jalen Williams, he's always going to have value as a 6'6" guy who can dribble, pass, and shoot. I think he's going to be a much better shooter than the 30% he's shooting now.
That's rookie stuff. He's not going to be a 30% 3-point shooter. He
made 40% of his threes last year in college. He made 81% of his free throws. He's making 80% of his free throws now. I think he's being forced to do stuff that are not in his comfort level right now, and that's good. Because like it's going to get easier for him later on when he has a smaller role, I think. And that's what, that he's like 6th right now in minutes played, which is, he's playing more minutes than any guy outside the top 6. And so, the Thunder, like they're letting him develop, they're bringing him along, and I think it's going to really pay dividends for them. He's awesome. I think he's going to be really good on both ends of the floor.
I'm a big fan. My only concern is like, he doesn't seem like a blowaway athlete who can like blow by people off the dribble. Faster guards have given him issues, but again, he's a rookie, but I think he's just a good basketball player. We're due, by the way, the timing of this podcast is unbelievable because some of rookies had their best ever games just last night. We're recording this on Tuesday morning.
Yeah.
As long as we're on the Thunder, Ousmane Dieng had, I think, a career high 13, 14 points last night, made 3 threes. You see exactly what he could, what the idea of him is, like big, ultra switchable 3-and-D player. Hasn't played much, so it's hard to get a read on him. Looks a little bit uncomfortable, like handling the ball and making decisions, but he's, I think, the second youngest player in the NBA. So that's to be expected. Size wise and is everything you want. Have you been happy with him so far? I mean, after he's been in the G League and recently he's come up and played a lot now on the real team.
Yeah, I mean, he started the year off playing a good amount, and then they sent him down to the G League. He played pretty well there, and then, now he's back with the big team and doing some interesting things. I mean, his shot has been very streaky, but, like he's 6'10". He's, he can really pass. He's, he guards multiple positions. I mean, he's got a good feel for the game. Like you said, he's 19 years old. And he's really thin and he's not an athlete. So it's going to be hard for him in the early going. But I mean, like the NBA scours the globe for these 6'10" guys who can handle, pass, and shoot and have feel on both ends. And so he has a very, very high ceiling. He's someone that I'd be very excited about if I were a Thunder fan, but it's going to take him time. The good thing for them is that they have a lot of time, and so they have no issue, throwing him on the floor in an NBA game yesterday, and just, and if it works, great, and they'll ride him, and if not, then they'll take him out. He had 15 points, 5 rebounds yesterday in 18 and a half minutes.
He's a willing shooter. He's 10 of 34 on threes, so it hasn't been great, but I don't really care. He's a willing shooter. He's confident. That matters to me as much at this stage of his career as anything else. You said feel on defense, and I don't disagree. Like defense is hard for rookies, but you see him rotating around the floor and making decisions in a way that suggests, as he learns the speed and the sort of stylistic tendencies of the NBA, that he's going to be a reliable defensive player. And he certainly has all the tools and the length, the ability to both guard quick guards and offer rim protection. Like I like the outlines of him. There's a rookie who had 31 points last night that I know you want to talk about. So please start gushing right now.
Andrew Nembhard. I mean, wow. Like, this is why the context is so important, because when I was doing my rankings, like, last week I saw he had like 40 pick and roll possessions the entire season. And like, he barely dribbled the ball for them. But the last 2 games, no Halliburton, no TJ McConnell. And so they were forced to put the ball in his hands, against the Golden State Warriors in San Francisco. And holy cow, what a performance. This guy had 31 points, 13 assists, 8 rebounds, blowing by Steph, with just not with explosiveness, just with it, his handle and his feel and his pace. And he's got sneaky good size. He's almost 6'5". And so he sees over the top. He lets the game come to him. And, the confidence that he's playing with is amazing. But, we've seen him play a very different role with Halliburton too. A lot of screening action where he's the screener and then he pops out or he rolls, and it just really confuses the defense, almost like a Bruce Brown type action that Carlisle is running. And then defensively, way ahead of, almost any rookie in this class off the ball, just like, he just plays so hard. He's got such great instincts. He's always in the right spots. He fights over screens. He gave Steph some real issues yesterday. I mean, Steph looked totally checked out yesterday. The Warriors, that's a different conversation. Not their most intense performance yesterday, but, got to credit the Pacers. They started so well, lost a couple of games, are on this tough road trip now. No Halliburton. And they put up 130 points or whatever on the Golden State Warriors. That was very impressive. Andrew Nembhard.
No Turner either in that game. No Miles Turner in that game. That's right.
Yeah. So the 31 pick in the draft, carries you to a win. That's got to be exciting. Like if you're Kevin Pritchard, Chad Buchanan. I mean, like, because Ben Mathurin, by the way, is a Rookie of the Year candidate. He's number 2 in, most of the Vegas odds. And so, like, they had a great draft, and they have a very interesting young team moving forward. The only issue is, I think going into the year, they probably were hoping to have a better shot at drafting Wembanyama, and that's, they might make the playoffs, like the way things are looking. The playing game, we'll see. It's a long season, but that's the Pacers they have some tough decisions coming up, with what to do with Miles Turner and Buddy Hield and all that, but they're in a great situation right now.
Well, I recorded part 1 of this podcast yesterday morning, so before they beat the Warriors on the road. And I mentioned to that point, the Pacers have played the easiest schedule in the NBA by opponent winning percentage. And so some pain was going to come. Well, they forestalled the pain by 1 game with a really nice win at Golden State without their 2 best players. And look, we've all talked about the Lakers trade endlessly. A couple of things on that. I mentioned extending Miles Turner a month ago. I mentioned it again yesterday, and Bobby Marks reminded me of something I've said before, but it's worth noting again. They have multiple ways to extend him, including giving him a raise this year with their cap room and then extending him out. And I don't think that idea has been disqualified by either side. Let's put it that way. I think there could be some traction there. The other thing on these Lakers deals, and we talked about it with DeRozan and Vucevic, just as a brief sidetrack, like, the other team has to be willing to do those deals. And I've talked about before, like, why that I don't think that theoretical trade with both picks coming back to the Bulls is like crazy for the Bulls, but the Bulls would have other options too. That's what's seldom discussed in some of these Lakers trade talks, is like, if the Bulls actually made DeRozan available, and I don't get the vibe, to be clear, right now, that they're in that mindset, even though they're 9-14 and careening. I don't think they're there yet, but if they were ever to get there, they'd have other options. Like, those Lakers picks are really good, but they'd have other options. But enough of that. The Pacers, if they keep Miles Turner and Buddy Hield, they're not going to get into the Wembanyama race without like insane lottery luck. It's just going to get too far away from them. They're too good. They're better than I thought. Mathurin, we don't even have to talk about. That guy is so as advertised as this combination of power and finesse that you rarely see in a wing or guard at that age. Like, he has a really soft, like, buttery jump shot, and then he goes to the rim like he wants to kill people. And I just love all that. You know how hard it is? You know how hard it is for a veteran guard to average 8 free throws per 36 minutes? Like, a veteran guard. DeAndre Ayton might not get 8 free throws in a week until the last week, and he's a center, and the last week he's gotten the line more, but like, that's like almost Jimmy Butler level free throw aggregation by Benedict Mathurin. Nembhard is, you mentioned the screening. I wrote about that last month, and that was what first got me onto him. The shooting and the defense you see, but his ability to screen and make plays in open space was really appealing. There's always one rookie, Herb Jones, whoever it is, random second round guy, who like sneaks on to first team all rookie, or is like the first guy on second team all rookie and bumps off. Like, there's always a Jalen Green who has like huge stats who gets bumped to second team by this particular type of rookie. This Nembhard is going to be that guy this year. I don't know where he's going to finish. God knows I haven't thought about all rookie yet. He looks like a basketball player, man. He's pretty good. And you said 6'5" and sneaky. I don't know what it is. Some guys, there's just this weird species of NBA player who looks like they're 6'1", and then you look up their height and they're 6'5". I don't know why. I don't know if it's playing style. When you said 6'5", I was like, whoa, he's 6'5"? I guess he's 6'5".
Yeah, he's just thin, and he doesn't have much length, and that's where one-on-one defensively he's struggled at times. They target him, like that Sacramento game, Malik Monk, the guys like that give him problems, but he's so good off the ball and he plays so hard that it's fine. Like, the question is for me is, is he going to be? He's shooting 43% for 3 right now. That is not who he was at all in college. He was a career 34% three-point shooter. And a lot of that is because he's taking easier shots. He doesn't have to handle the ball especially when you're playing with Halliburton, you're going to step into rhythm threes. But yesterday, holy cow, the shot making off the bounce, like that was like, wow, that's eye-opening. We didn't see that at Gonzaga as much, but yeah, I mean, like, and people are like, oh, he's 30 years old. No, he's not. He's 22. He's going to keep getting stronger. He's going to keep getting better. If he keeps up this confidence in his shot, and also, just playing, at his own pace and getting in the paint, because he doesn't do that a lot. He doesn't get to the free throw line. He's not the most physical finisher, but he's shown flashes of being able to do that a little bit more. And, his feel for the game is so good that, I mean, he's going to be, I mean, he's on a 4-year contract for basically the minimum, like that. He's one of the best contracts in the NBA right now.
And look, they have a foundational backcourt in Halliburton, Mathurin. Like that's a great place to start. How they build out the rest of the roster over the next 3 years is going to be really interesting, particularly if Miles Turner eventually ever gets moved, because that leaves a gigantic void. And Isaiah Jackson has been pretty hit or miss. Goga never plays. The other guys are, Terry Taylor, O'Shea Brissett. I mean, they're kind of fringy guys. I have a soft spot for Brissett, but it, the roster is kind of shallow when you look medium long term, but those two guards are special, and Nembhard looks like he's going to be a good supporting piece for a long time.
They've got picks too. This is a very good draft coming up. I think they have 3 first-rounders.
They have their own. They have Boston's via the Brogdon deal, and they have Cleveland's if assuming Cleveland makes the playoffs, because it's lottery protected and then it converts immediately. And that's interesting. I've mentioned this about the Pacers before. They have picks. They are rebuilding. You mentioned the Wembanyama sort of pipe dream. I think the reason why we are fixated on this and how they are right now, at least above the Wembanyama brigade, is, they got these couple extra picks. Oklahoma City has 1 million picks. Houston has 1 million picks. Some teams that are good, like New Orleans, has 1 million picks. Utah has 1 million picks. All those teams that are rebuilding, maybe a step behind the Pacers, maybe even with the Pacers, depending on how you conceive of some of their players, they have a lot more bites at the apple, and they're, other than Utah, at least right now, much worse in the present day. And so you just sort of, that's where the uncertainty of how does Indiana find the next guy and set of guys if they don't tank this season. But look, the Pacers have never really been a tank team, and they have always found ways to remain competitive. I think they're actually one of the, they're never sexy to talk about other than when they're going head to head with Miami in the conference finals all those years, and then the second round one year. I think they're one of, like, everyone trumps up the Spurs. The Spurs have won 1 million titles. They deserve all the love. The Pacers staying this competitive for, like, since the 80s, basically, is one of the great kind of just good, competent stories in the NBA. And that the fact that they've never won the whole thing and only made the finals once shouldn't really, like, there should be a little Pacers appreciation. They've been good for a long time, mostly good for a long time.
And they actually have a license to tank, is my understanding, if they want to do it. I think ownership is on board with this. And so we might see them transition. Problem is they're probably too good. Like Halliburton, too good. Miles Turner, Mathurin, Nembhard. Rick Carlisle is a really good coach. So I don't know how they flip the switch to being bad, because the next 2 drafts after this, it's too early to say, but like not looking great right now, so if you want to do your tank job, you better do it this year, because not only is Victor there, but like Scoot Henderson, the Thompson twins, this is a very, very good class, and there's depth to it too. So, some tough decisions coming up for them. And I think if they want to tank, it's there for them. I don't think ownership's going to stand in their way, but like, they're probably really excited. I mean, it's fun to win. And so
I don't even know, honestly, I wish I knew the answer to that question. Would ownership really green light it? Because it seems to change by the day, by the week, by the win, by the loss. Yeah, I've said all along, if the Lakers came with those 2 picks unprotected, at the very least, the Pacers would get Herb Simon and Herb Jr. and all the brain trust in a room and say, okay, this is the one. We've got to discuss
It's
this
too
one.
far off. Those picks are too far off. They
It
need to
doesn't
find
matter.
something sooner.
They'd still have the meeting, and I bet you the front office would try to twist the arms of the ownership and say, this is the one we got to do.
I think they have the equity to pull off almost any trade that they want in terms of ownership, is my understanding. Question is, what do they want? To get a 2029 first rounder. I mean, like, Zach, we could all be dead by then. Wow,
that's dark. Usually I say Miami could be underwater by then, or like the world could be underwater by then. We could all be dead by then.
It's a long time, but 7 years from now. Like that, I don't know how much that interests me, honestly. A first round pick in 2029. I mean, like, geez.
I think Kevin Pritchard should use that line if Pelinka ever makes the offer. Be like, look, Rob, we can all be dead by then. Well, I don't want that pick. Like, I'm going to talk to teams that can give me picks for next season. We could all be dead by then. Oh my God. I think I'm like a curmudgeon and a pessimist. Like I'm wow. That's dark. You have a young family.
It's dark out there, Zach.
You have a young family. Give them some hope. Croatia's in the final eight of the World Cup. Don't bring me down.
Enjoy that. Yeah, enjoy it while you can.
Oh, my God. All right, well, let's talk about another teenager who has a bright future in this world, hopefully ahead of him. The last guy, there's a lot of rookies we can talk about.
2029.
We're not going to get to Walker Kessler, who is, as advertised, monster offensive rebounder, monster shot blocker, holding opponents to 53% shooting at the rim. Dyson Daniels, I wrote about in 10 Things last week. Love Dyson Daniels. He's a fun all-around player. I've talked about AJ Griffin in 10 Things last week with the Hawks. Love what I've seen from AJ Griffin. Old school, stout, pull-up two game, has earned a big rotation role there. Written about all those guys, so we're going to cut it short. Let's go to Detroit and two rookies that I haven't talked much about, Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren. Duren is the youngest player in the NBA. Cade's been out. Sadiq Bey was out for a while. Bagley was out for a while. Now Bagley's back. When Bagley came back, Stewart was out. So they haven't really been able to play the rotation that they want to play. I don't even know if they know the rotation they want to play in terms of, are they really going all in with like these double center lineups and Isaiah Stewart at the 4. Ivy hasn't had his backcourt mate for the last 15 games or whatever it is. So it's been hard to get a feel for exactly what these guys are, but I think there's reasons for great optimism with both of them. And for sure, I think Detroit envisions Ivy, Cunningham, Duren as 3/5 of its starting five when in the next 2, 3, 4 years as the team gets into what it's going to be. Ivy obviously was the subject of much infatuation and trading up, attempts to trade up. What have you seen from him so far, particularly with Cade out, which is tough sledding for him?
I think Jaden Ivey, it might be the most exciting rookie in the NBA. I would be thrilled right now if I'm a Pistons fan with Ivy and Duren. I mean, Jaden Ivey has been much better than Keegan Murray, even though he's 2 years younger. For the modern game, just having a guy like that who's 6'4", watching his film, I was like, this guy is like, he's a young Russell Westbrook, the athleticism in the open floor, and also in the half court, just changing speeds. Nobody can guard him. I was watching the Celtics game, for example. The Celtics have good backcourt defenders. They couldn't guard him either. So he's just 20. He's got so much more room to grow. Obviously, his shot needs to improve, his decision-making, his defense, all the things that we knew coming into the NBA season. But Jaden Ivey looks awesome. And if he weren't in Detroit, which is probably the worst team in the NBA and just not a very attractive team to watch in general, people would be so much more excited about him, I feel. Just watching him, I was like, holy cow, like Jaden Ivey is going to be awesome. And the same thing can be said about Jalen Duren. He's been, all over the place, night to night. You don't know what you're going to get from him, but he's already top 10 in the NBA in dunks, He's top 10 in offensive rebound percentage. And some of the things that he does defensively, hedging out to half court, switching on guys, rotating to protect the rim. Like there's some bad moments there too. I mean, he is the youngest player in the NBA. I mean, he could almost be in high school right now. He just turned 19 years old.
Yeah, it's too bad for him. We're all going to be dead in 2029.
He's got 7 years, so he may as well enjoy it while he can.
I didn't hear anything you said. The last 2 minutes, I just zoned out thinking about how we're all going to be dead in 2029. You could have said anything. You could have said Jaden Ivey's my MVP of the whole season. I'd take him over LeBron James. I don't know. I zoned out.
Detroit is sneakily a very interesting young team. Once they get Cade back, Isaiah Stewart, I mean, offensively, like that guy has made a big leap too. I was watching some of the minutes with Ivy and I'm like, Isaiah Stewart is shooting threes like that now. I mean, that was something that like he never did in college. Okay, defensively, he's got a lot of room to grow, but like if Isaiah Stewart were on the Lakers right now, people would be very, very fired up about him. He's gotten a lot better.
Yeah, it's interesting because, and
he's 21, by the way.
They came into the season after the last 30, 40 games of last season. They're like, all right, we're built to switch almost everything. We think Isaiah Stewart's got good feet at the 5. We can switch with him. And then he's undersized for a center, and Jalen Duren just physically is a monster. And you mentioned hedging and protecting the rim. I think that's the vision with him is you look at him and you think rim protector, and he's going to be a rim protector. I think the Pistons think we can play any scheme defensively with Duren. We can switch with him, and he has so much force and length on the perimeter that he might end up being better than Stewart at that kind of defense. I do think it's interesting that they seem so into playing Stewart at the 4, basically, next to Bagley and next to Duren. I didn't really see that coming. He is shooting 36% on threes, Isaiah Stewart, on 4 attempts a game. So it's not like trivial, like you said, and some of them are above the break now. It's not just corner threes. It's not just like the no one's near me, I'm going to wind up, check the wind and shoot threes. They're real threes. And it is, I think they're trying to see if, we've been writing for 10 years now, small ball is really just about skill, not size. And the ultimate apex of the NBA is size plus skill plus playmaking across the board, is guys who can be 7 feet tall, 6'10", 6'8", and play like guards. And I think Detroit is trying to see if can we combine enough size and skill in these 2 big groups. I'm kind of skeptical, but I'm in for the experience of watching it. Like I don't know that Isaiah Stewart's their long-term starting 4. I'd rather someone like Saddiq Bey win that job, and Saddiq Bey's been kind of this year. But I'm kind of into watching it. But I think Duren's going to be really good, and I think Ivy. I mean, the speed, the change of pace. He's got a floater. He's got confidence. There's nothing not to like about either of these guys. 20 games into the season, really.
Yeah, you can see the outlines of what Detroit is trying to build, and that's all that. I think that when I'm watching these bad teams, that's all I want to see is what are these guys trying to get to in a year or two, and you could see it honestly, and it'll be way more visible once Cade gets back, and then if they get Scoot Henderson or someone like that, they're then they're going to be off to the races big time.
Jonathan Givony, your rookie power rankings that don't have Tari Eason, so I don't like them, are out on ESPN.com. They came out yesterday. They are a fantastic read. Your draft coverage is absolutely essential to everyone in the NBA. At least this year, there's not going to be any drama about who's going to go number 1. Yeah, I can be one of your sources for who's going to be the number 1 pick in the draft. Everybody go read Jonathan Givony's stuff. Listen to everything he does. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Zach. Have a great day.